Have you ever found yourself eating chips out of the bag while you're driving home from the grocery store? Or finishing bites of leftover dinner while you're cleaning up? Maybe you're always going back for seconds, even when you're not really hungry. Now, if you're nodding along, know that you're not alone. These hidden eating habits are more common than you think, and they might be sabotaging your health goals without you even realizing it. In today's episode, I'm pulling back the curtain on 8 sneaky little habits that many of us have picked up over the years. These aren't the big, obvious things that we usually talk about when it comes to diet and nutrition. No, these are little everyday behaviors that fly under the radar, but can have a huge impact on our health and well being. I'll be sharing my own journey of breaking free from these habits, and trust me, it has been eye opening. You'll hear how these small changes have transformed not just my eating patterns, but my entire relationship with food. And I bet that you will recognize yourself in some of these stories. But here's the thing, once you're aware of these habits, you can't unsee them. And that awareness, that's the first step to making real, lasting change. So if you've ever felt frustrated with your eating patterns, or wondered why you can't seem to reach your health goals, this episode might just hold the key that you've been looking for. Welcome to Total Health in Midlife, the podcast for women embracing the pivotal transformation from the daily grind to the dawn of a new chapter. I'm Elizabeth, your host and fellow traveler on this journey. As a life and health coach, I am intimately familiar with the changes and challenges we face during this stage. Shifting careers, changing relationships, our new bodies, and redefined goals and needs as we start to look to the future and ask, what do I want? In this podcast, we'll explore physical, mental, and emotional wellness, offering insights and strategies to achieve optimal health through these transformative years. Yes, it's totally possible. Join me in this amazing journey of body, mind, and spirit, where we're not just improving our health, but transforming our entire lives. Hey everyone, welcome to the Total Health in Midlife podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Sherman, and I am so glad that you are here with me today. Now, today we are tackling a topic that is close to my heart and probably closer to your daily life than you might realize. These are hidden eating habits that we don't really talk about. You know, those tiny little things that we do with food that we barely even notice anymore. They've become so ingrained in our routines that they're practically invisible. I was reminded of this recently when I was talking to a client and she mentioned how she always grabs a treat from her grocery bag to eat on the drive home. And it hit me. Oh my God, I used to do the same thing. And it got me thinking about all these little food behaviors that we develop over time, often without even realizing it. And here's the thing, these habits aren't just quirks. They can have a real impact on our health, our relationship with food, and even how we feel about ourselves. But here's the kicker, we rarely talk about them. They're not exactly secrets, but they're not exactly dinner party conversation either. When was the last time you and your friends discussed who eats standing up or who always goes for seconds? These habits are personal, they're intimate, and sometimes a little uncomfortable to acknowledge. But that's exactly why we need to talk about them. Because I bet you're not alone in whatever eating habits you've picked up along the way. And recognizing them, that's the first step to deciding if they're serving you or if it's time for a change. Let's pull back the curtain on these hidden habits. You might just find yourself nodding along, realizing that you're not the only one who's been there. And more importantly, you'll see that change is possible and it can be incredibly freeing. So first, I want to take a moment and talk about how these hidden eating habits sneak into our lives. I mean, it's not like we wake up one day and decide, hey, I'm going to start eating while standing up at the kitchen counter. No, these habits creep in slowly, often born out of crazy busy lives and the stress that comes with them. Remember when you got your driver's license? For me, it was all about the freedom to hit that McDonald's drive-thru and order whatever I wanted. There was something so empowering about eating what I wanted when I wanted in the privacy of my own car. Heck, my sister even chose an automatic transmission for her very first car specifically so that she could eat and drive more easily. This connection between cars and food runs deep. I mean, think about road trips. Snacks are practically required equipment, right? So it's no wonder that for many of us, eating in the car becomes second nature. But here's the thing. What starts as an occasional treat can quickly become a daily habit without us even noticing it. And it's not just about eating in the car. These habits pop up all over our lives. Maybe you start nibbling while you're cooking dinner because you're starving after a long day, or you find yourself always going back for seconds because, well, that's just what you do at the end of the meal. These habits often form during our younger years when our bodies could handle a bit more. But as we get older, they don't agree with us quite as well as they used to. Yet we keep doing them, almost on autopilot, not realizing the impact that they're having on our health and well-being. But here's what I want you to know. If you've got some of these habits, first, you're not alone. They're incredibly common, especially for women juggling the demands of midlife. Work, family, maybe caring for aging parents. It's a lot. And in the midst of all that, these little eating habits can feel like small comforts or simple necessities to get through the day. But recognizing them, that's where the power lies. Because once you see them, you can decide if they're serving you or if it's time for a change. And trust me, making that change can be incredibly freeing. So first, one of the most common eating habits is eating in the car, as I talked about. This was actually one of the first habits that I broke in my 20s. And looking back, I am so grateful that I did. Picture this. So here I am, fresh out of college, and I loved going to Burger King for their special at the time. It was 2 burgers, 2 fries for $2. It was great, especially for a young professional who was completely broke. But here's the thing. I'd barely make it home with all the fries, if I had any at all. I mean, come on, can you blame me? The smell of fresh hot fries wafting through the car is impossible to resist. And we all know cold fries are sad and they're just terrible. So, of course, we all have to take some and eat them right away. But here's where things get interesting. Breaking this habit wasn't actually a conscious choice at first. What started as a decision to stop eating fast food because it actually made me feel bad physically eventually led me to not eating in the car at all. As I shifted towards a vegetarian diet, my options for car-friendly foods dwindled. I mean, have you ever tried eating a salad while you're driving? It's not a pretty sight. Now, you might be wondering, what's the big deal about eating in the car? Well, the impact goes beyond just consuming extra calories. When we eat in the car, we're not really tasting or enjoying our food. We're just shoving it in. We're distracted because we're focused on driving, or we should be. And we're barely aware of what or how much we're actually eating. It's a recipe for overeating and being undersatisfied at the same time. But the benefits of breaking this habit, they're huge. Not only did I start consuming less food overall, but I also began to appreciate and enjoy my meals more. And let's not forget the practical perks. My car now stays a lot cleaner and it's more hygienic. And I'm a safer driver, hopefully, being more focused on the road. Looking back, I realize how much freedom I've gained by letting go of this habit. No more crumbs in the seat cracks, no more greasy steering wheel, and no more mindless eating. It's one less thing to worry about, one less automatic behavior controlling my day. Now, if you're nodding along, recognizing this habit in yourself, again, know that you're not alone. We all are conditioned to eat in our cars. It's a sneaky one, often disguised as convenience or a necessity. Next up on our list of sneaky eating habits is a habit that's so common, yet so rarely discussed: going back for seconds. Now, this one was a big one for me, and I'm pretty sure that you can relate to it too. So here's the scene. You're sitting at the kitchen table, you've just finished your amazing meal, and those serving dishes are right there on the stove, and they're tempting you. Just a little bit more, you think. It's so good, and it's right there. And so trust me, I get it with all of these habits because I've done all of them. For years, my husband Gary and I would eat our dinners at our kitchen table, and then the temptation to scoop up just a little bit more was almost irresistible. But here's the thing, I knew deep down that I wasn't still hungry. In many cases, I was actually already full. It wasn't about need, it was about pure habit, and often a way to deal with emotions that I really probably wasn't even aware of. This habit is particularly sneaky because it often masquerades as appreciation for the food or not wanting to waste. But in reality, it's usually about something else entirely. Maybe it's stress from work, anxiety about kids or aging parents, or just the general overwhelm that comes with midlife. Food becomes a comfort, a distraction, a momentary escape. For many women in midlife, going back for seconds is tied to complex emotional needs. We're juggling so much: careers, families, and our changing bodies. And food can feel like the one thing that we can control. Or maybe it's the opposite. We feel out of control in so many areas of our lives that this habit is a subconscious rebellion against all of the rules and restrictions that we face daily. Breaking this habit was not easy. It took a conscious effort and, yes, some discomfort. There were nights when I had to physically remove myself from the table to avoid that second helping. But here's what I discovered: the discomfort was temporary, and the benefits are long lasting. Over time, I learned to tune into my body's actual hunger signals, and I started savoring my meals more, knowing that first plate was all I needed. And you know what? I began to feel more in control, not just of my eating, but of my choices in general. If you're struggling with this habit, again, know that you're not alone. It's not about willpower or being quote unquote good enough. It's about understanding the deeper reasons behind the habit and finding new ways to address those needs. So maybe it's taking a moment to breathe before meals, or finding alternative ways to de-stress that don't involve food. Change is possible. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but trust me, the freedom on the other side is worth it. Next, let's shine a light on a habit that's so common we barely even notice it anymore. And that's eating while standing. You know the drill. You're in the kitchen, maybe you're rummaging through the pantry, looking for a little something, but not quite sure what. It's like your body is on autopilot, seeking out food without any real hunger driving it. And it seems like overkill to sit down with it. I mean, it's just like a chocolate or something, right? Now, this was a big one for me. I'd find myself standing in front of the open pantry, snacking mindlessly, not even tasting what I was eating. It was my wake-up call the moment I realized I needed to learn how to stop eating emotionally. Here's what I did. I made a pact with myself. I could eat whatever I wanted, but I had to be seated at the kitchen table, undistracted, no TV, no phone, just me and my food. It sounds simple, but it was revolutionary. This small change did wonders for my mindfulness and portion control. Suddenly, I was paying attention to my hunger levels and actually tasting my food. I started deriving more pleasure from eating, which surprisingly led to eating less overall. Breaking this habit was like turning on a light in a dim room. I became aware of all of those times I'd quote unquote forgotten about the handful of chips or the extra cookie. By staying conscious during my eating, I not only enjoyed my food more, but I also naturally reduced my intake. If you find yourself grazing in the kitchen or eating on the go, try this simple shift. It might feel strange at first, but trust me, the awareness that you'll gain is game changing. It's not about restriction, it's about reconnecting with your food and your body's true needs. Here's a tricky one that often flies under the radar, a habit that's so easy to fall into, especially when life gets hectic, and that's eating straight from the large container. You know the scene. You're stressed after a long day, the kids are demanding attention, and before you know it, you're elbow deep in a family-sized bag of chips. I'll be honest, I still occasionally do this one. It's usually when my husband has the bag out and I'll sneak a couple chips. But here's the crucial difference. It's now the exception and not the rule. And when I do indulge, I have to be super mindful. There's a little voice in the back of my head that pipes up, and if I don't pay attention, I'll railroad right over it. It says, "Don't you think that's enough? If you eat more, you'll probably regret it." And let me tell you, ignoring that voice never ends well. Here's why eating from large containers is a tricky habit. We lose all sense of portion control. It's like our brain doesn't register how much we're actually consuming. But when we take the time to portion out our snacks into a bowl, we get a visual cue of how much we're about to eat. It's a simple act, but it makes a world of difference in helping us gauge our intake. This habit is particularly sneaky in midlife when we're juggling a million things. Maybe you're grabbing a quick snack while helping with homework or munching mindlessly during a stressful work call. But remember, those calories do add up, often without us even realizing it. By breaking this habit, you're not just controlling portions. You're also giving yourself a moment to pause and to check in. Do you really want this snack? How much will satisfy you? It's about bringing mindfulness back to your eating, even in those busy midlife moments. Moving on to another subtle but impactful behavior, a habit that is so deeply ingrained in many of our dining routines is family-style dining versus plating our portions. Now, this is a big one, folks, and it's something that I see come up time and time again in my coaching sessions. We've all been there. You've prepared a delicious meal and you bring all the serving dishes to the table. It looks inviting, doesn't it? After all, eating is communal. But here's the catch. When the food is right there in front of you, it's all too easy to keep eating long after you're satisfied. How many times have you finished your meal only to find yourself picking at the leftover bits in the serving platters? I know I've been there more times than I can count. This is where the magic of plated portions comes in. By serving your meal in the kitchen and bringing only your plate to the table, you create what I like to call a point of pause. It's a moment of reflection where you have to actively decide if you're still hungry enough to get up and serve yourself more. Now, I'm not saying family-style dining is inherently bad. It can be a wonderful way to connect and share a meal. But for many of us, especially for those of us in midlife when our metabolism might not be what it once was, it can lead to mindless overeating. One of my clients, Holly, struggled with this exact issue. She'd grown up with family-style dinners and continued the tradition with her own family. But she found herself consistently overeating, almost on autopilot. When we switched her to plated portions, the change was remarkable. Not only did she naturally eat less, but she also found herself more present during meals, enjoying conversations instead of constantly eyeing the serving dishes. Another client, Michelle, was skeptical at first. She loved the communal feel of family style dining. So we compromised. She'd plate her main course, but leave salads and vegetables on the table. This small change helped her control her intake of higher calorie foods while still maintaining the family style experience that she really enjoyed. The key here is awareness. By removing the constant temptation from the middle of the table, you give yourself the opportunity to check in with your body. Are you still hungry? Or are you eating just because the food is there? It's about creating a dining environment that supports your health goals while still allowing for enjoyment and flexibility. Again, breaking this habit isn't about rules or deprivation. It's about setting yourself up for success and making it easier to listen to your body's true hunger signals. Give it a try. You might be surprised at how much a simple change can transform your eating habits. Now, here's a pattern that many of my clients initially struggle to recognize, a habit that is so ingrained, many of us don't even realize that we're doing it, and that's ignoring our hunger level. After 18 years in the health and fitness space and 15 years of intimately working with clients on this topic, I can tell you it's incredibly common, especially for women in midlife. Here's a scenario that might sound familiar. You eat breakfast because it's 7 a.m., and that's when you always eat breakfast. You have lunch at noon because that's your lunch hour. And dinner? Well, that's when the family gathers, regardless of whether you're actually hungry or not. Sounds about right, right? The truth is, many women come to me not even knowing what their hunger and fullness signals feel like. They've been following external rules for so long, like eating when others are eating because it's time, and then stopping because the plate is empty, that they've lost touch with their body's natural wisdom. And let's talk about what happens in midlife for a moment. Our bodies are changing, and so are our hunger cues. Hormonal shifts can mess with our appetite, making it even harder to interpret what our body truly needs. Add in stress, busy schedules, and maybe some emotional eating patterns, and it's no wonder that we're not tuned into our hunger. But here's the thing. Eating intuitively, in tune with your body's actual needs, can be revolutionary. It's not about following a strict meal plan or counting calories, but rather about relearning how to listen to your body. One of my clients, Maria, came to me eating 3 meals a day like clockwork. Regardless of her hunger, she'd power through intense hunger in the afternoon because it wasn't time to eat yet, and then overeat at dinner because, quite honestly, she was famished. We worked on tuning into her body's signals, and it was like a light bulb moment for her. She realized that she actually needed a small afternoon snack and a lighter dinner. The result was more energy, better digestion, and a more peaceful relationship with food. Learning to eat intuitively takes time and practice. It's about asking yourself, am I hungry right now before you eat? And then, am I satisfied as you're eating? It's about giving yourself permission to eat when you're truly hungry, even if it's not mealtime. And to stop when you're satisfied, even if there's food left on your plate. This habit of tuning into your hunger levels isn't just about weight management, although that's often a positive side effect. It's about honoring your body, reducing stress around food, and ultimately feeling more in control and at peace with your eating habits. Now, you might recognize yourself in this next habit, eating while cooking. And this was a big one for me. There was a time when I'd be so busy nibbling and tasting as I cooked that by the time I sat down to dinner with my partner, I was already full. But I still felt obligated to eat the meal I'd prepared. I mean, after all, I had made it, right? And so the result was I couldn't enjoy the meal mindfully. I was stuffed, uncomfortable, and worst of all, I didn't even feel like I'd had a proper meal. It's a strange paradox, being full, but not being fully satisfied. That's because sitting down to a plated meal, focusing on the food and enjoying it without distraction, is what gives us that experience of truly eating a meal. This habit can really sneak up on you. A taste here, a little sample there. It doesn't seem like much, but all those little bites do add up, and often to the equivalent of a full meal before you've even sat down to the table. And because it's spread out over time, your brain doesn't register it as a meal, leaving you feeling unsatisfied despite having consumed plenty of calories. Breaking this habit was a game changer for me. It not only allowed me to actually enjoy the meals I prepared, but to eat mindfully with my partner and to have a much better gauge on my hunger and fullness levels. Plus, it made cooking a more focused and enjoyable experience. I could concentrate on the flavors I was creating without constantly snacking. Now, if you find yourself falling into this habit, again, know that you're not alone, but also know that with a little awareness and practice that you can change it. This last habit is one that many folks struggle with and one that I typically talk with all of my clients about. And it's born out of good intentions, but can lead us down a slippery slope. And that's eating leftovers during our cleanup. I know this one all too well, and I bet you do too. Here's the situation you might recognize. Dinner's over, and you're clearing the table. There's that little bit of pasta left in the pot, or those few bites of casserole that aren't quite enough for a full meal tomorrow. What do? If you're like I used to be, you probably pop them into your mouth while cleaning up. We do this because we feel guilty about wasting food. It's not enough to save, and it seems wrong to throw it away when there are hungry people in the world, right? But here's the hard truth. By eating food that we don't need or even really want, we are treating our bodies like garbage cans. This habit is a perfect storm of mindless eating. You're not sitting down to enjoy the food. You're not even really tasting it. You're just consuming calories your body doesn't need, often after you've already had a full meal. The consequences are extra calories, sure, but it's more than that. It's about disconnecting from our hunger cues, ignoring our body's signals that we've had enough. And it's about valuing the idea of not wasting food over honoring our body's needs. Now, breaking this habit was eye-opening for me. I realized that respecting my body and my health was more important than saving a few bites of leftovers. It helped me to become more mindful about portion sizes when cooking and reducing overall food waste. Keep in mind that you are not a human garbage disposal. It's okay to let go of those last few bites. Coaching can be a lifeline when it comes to breaking these hidden eating habits. It's not about willpower or following a set of rules. Coaching digs deeper, addressing the root causes of why we develop these habits in the first place. When I work with clients, we start by bringing awareness to these unconscious behaviors. Many women are surprised to realize just how many of these habits they've picked up over the years. It's like turning on a light in a dim room. Suddenly, everything becomes clearer. But awareness is just the beginning. The real magic happens when we start exploring the why behind these habits. For example, one of my clients, Sarah, realized that her habit of eating while standing in the kitchen was actually a way of sneaking food without feeling guilty. This insight was crucial in helping her develop a healthier relationship with food overall. And then my other client, Lisa, struggled with going back for seconds at every meal. Through our coaching sessions, she discovered this habit stemmed from childhood experiences of food scarcity. Once she understood this, we could work on developing new patterns that made her feel safe and satisfied without overeating. Coaching also provides a supportive environment for experimentation and growth. It's not about perfection, but rather about progress. When my client Jane decided to tackle her habit of eating in the car, we brainstormed alternatives and strategies together. She tried different approaches, celebrated her successes, and learned from the times that she slipped up. This process of trial and error, guided by a coach, me, led to lasting change. One of the most powerful aspects of coaching is the accountability it provides. It's one thing to decide to change your habit on your own, and another to have someone checking in, offering support, and helping you troubleshoot challenges along the way. Many clients tell me this accountability is what finally allows them to break habits that they've struggled with for years. Coaching also helps in developing new, healthier habits to replace the old ones. For instance, when Katrina wanted to stop eating leftovers during cleanup, we worked on creating a new routine of immediately packing leftovers for lunch the next day. This simple shift made a huge difference in her overall eating patterns. The beauty of coaching is that it's tailored to each individual. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's totally okay. Through coaching, we can find the strategies and approaches that resonate with you, fitting into your lifestyle and aligning with your personal goals. Breaking these hidden eating habits isn't just about changing behaviors. It's about transforming your relationship with food and yourself. And that's where the true power of coaching lies. Now, as I wrap up this episode, I want to emphasize how crucial it is to recognize these hidden eating habits. In sharing my personal experiences and those of my clients, I've highlighted just how common and impactful these behaviors can be. From eating in the car to mindlessly snacking during cooking, these habits often fly under the radar but can significantly affect our health and our relationship with food. I've walked this path myself, breaking free from many of these habits, and I've guided numerous clients through similar journeys. What I've learned is that awareness is the first step, but it's not always enough on its own. And that's where coaching with me comes in. If you found yourself nodding along to any of these habits as I've discussed today, know that you're not alone. More importantly, know that change is possible. I've seen it happen time and time again in my coaching practice and with myself. Whether it's learning to eat more mindfully, breaking the cycle of emotional eating, or simply developing a healthier relationship with your food, coaching can provide the support, the accountability, and the personalized strategies that you need. I'm here to help you navigate this journey. If you're ready to take the next step in transforming your eating habits and overall health, I want to invite you to reach out. You can book a strategy call with me through my website at elizabethsherman.com/call, and that link will be in the show notes. During this call, we'll discuss your specific challenges and goals and explore how coaching might support you in creating lasting change. Breaking these habits isn't just about changing what you eat. It's also about changing how you approach food and taking care of yourself. It's about finding freedom and peace in your relationship with eating. And I'm here to guide you every step of the way. That's all I have for you today. Have an amazing week. I will talk to you next week for more about overeating. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the plethora of health advice out there and looking for something that's straightforward, my 8 Basic Habits That Healthy People Do guide and checklist is just what you need. It breaks down essential habits into simple, actionable steps that you already know how to do. By following these habits, you'll set yourself on a path to better health, surpassing most people that you know. To get your free copy, just click the link in the show notes or go to elizabethsherman.com/habits. It's an easy start, but it could make all the difference in your health journey. Grab your guide today and take the first step towards a healthier you.